Today on BreakThrough.
When things begin to feel like they're crawling over the top of you and you don't see hope for your tomorrow, that's when you need to look out and say, God, who's somebody else that I can pour into?
You think you're the only one going through it. You think you're the only one that messed up. You're the only one that stopped reading your Bible or praying or even just intentionally spending time with God. But you're not alone. When you can't see the light at the end of the tunnel, when you can't see that ray of hope and all you want to do is quit, you don't have to quit. God has a plan for you and your life, and He wants to help you break through.
We're so glad you've joined us today on BreakThrough, and I'll tell you what, we're talking the second week about the ingredients for love. It's a different set than last week, but we talked about that recipe, and I was just thinking, we're coming up on some activities that we do as a family, and in that, there's those recipes we have that we enjoy when we're together as a family. And we have a little bit of variation that comes in depending on who makes it. Why? Because they have adapted their recipe to their ingredients that they like the most in there. So sometimes it comes out with a little different outcome. But I'll tell you, God's love in our lives and it perfected in us has several ingredients in it. And we're going to look at another part of those today and see how God wants us to be. Well, today we're going to talk about love and the 9 ingredients of love. And we see this in 1 Corinthians chapter 13, and I'm going to read those verses in 4 through 7. It says, "Love suffers long and is kind. Love does not envy. Love does not parade itself and is not puffed up. It does not behave rudely, and it does not seek its own. It is not provoked and thinks no evil. It does not rejoice in iniquity, but rejoices in truth. Love bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, and endures all things." That's a lot of things, but that's the ingredients of love in our life. And the first one that we're going to just kind of do a quick review on is patience. And what does that mean? It means love waiting without anxiety. Woohoo! Have you ever been waiting for something, but it's not really in patience? When is it going to get here? But that's what love is. It does it without anxiety. We also see that love, one of the ingredients of that is kindness. And in kindness, what is kindness? It's love in action. It's love not just in words, but in deed. And all of us have had somebody who says, "I love you," but we're like, if you love me, then why don't you do this? If you love me, why do you do that, right? Because there's an action that goes with that kindness that we're looking for. And then we also see that an ingredient of love is generosity. And I love this one because we talked about it before, but it's love and completion. When something is generous, it completes something. It doesn't leave it without or lacking. And then we also see that another ingredient of love is humility. And in humility, that's not just saying, "Oh, I'm a humble person," because sometimes the people that say they're the most humble, you're like, really? They always want to talk about how humble they are. But if you're humble, you don't have to say it. You just are. And so in that, we see that humility. And then that 5th ingredient is courtesy. And again, that goes along with what we've just been talking about. But love, being courtesy, is love in society. Again, just being courteous. It's amazing when you talk to people. And I kind of grew up, saying yes, sir, and yes, ma'am to people. And some people don't get that. They'll look at me, "Don't call me sir." And I one time had a boss, I would say yes, sir to him all the time. He's like, "Stop saying sir to me." And it happened to be that my husband and I were working at the same place in a large company, and we ended up in a meeting, and he said something, and I said yes, sir to him. So my boss finally quit saying stop being, he goes, "You even say it to your husband." So I don't know what to say. You say it to everybody. And I told him that it was such a habit for me. But in today's society, we don't even have a lot of politeness for people. There's no recognition of that. And that should be a part of what love is. And I'll tell you, when you have that, it's amazing because it makes a statement. I have a friend that just put their child in preschool for the first time. And the teacher, a couple days into it, said, "I just can't get over how polite your child is." And here they're not even 2, but they have a lot of politeness that's uncommon for today. Most 2-year-olds or 20-year-olds or 42-year-olds don't have a lot of politeness, right? So when it's there, it's like, whoa, uncommon. It sticks out. And that's what we're talking about in these ingredients of love. When you've got a great recipe and all the ingredients are there, it makes a statement. People want more of it. And so when we have these ingredients of love present in our life, it makes a statement, not just about who you are, but who God is. And I don't mean that you have to wear a sign that says, this is God, but people will be like, why are you like this? You know, I love the story. I was talking with someone, and they have different people that they're praying for that they'd like to know Christ, but they're just living it in their lives. And there's some of those people that they work with that they kind of put on their list, but they don't walk by and say, I'm praying for you. I'm praying for you, you know. But yet one of those people that they work with literally chased them out of the building one day into the parking lot and said, I have a question for you. I know you go to church. Where is it? Because I think I need to go. Now, again, it wasn't because they were wearing a banner, but because they saw something in them. And the more you have the ingredients of love taken in your place in your life, somebody's going to see something in you that they're like, what's different? I love another story about that. Again, another coworker, and they walked up to the person and they said, I just want to be like you. And they're like, no, you don't. You know, you want to be like me, like with Jesus, but not the me without Jesus. You know, because the me without Jesus isn't that nice, you know, isn't that good. And so that person then ended up coming to church with them. But not only did they come to church, they're walking in that same relationship. Their life has been changed. Their family has been changed. Why? Because they saw something different in who they were. They saw something different in that love component. And so we see that here in that, even in courtesy. If you're polite and courteous, people, you're going to stand out. The next one that we're going to talk about, number 6 ingredient for love, it's one you're all going to be excited for, unselfishness. Woohoo! But what does that mean? And the unselfish part, what does that mean? It means love in essence. And I began to think about that word essence, which is a lot of times used with fragrances, but it means the most significant element. It means the greatest aspect of something. And so is your love, is it significant? Is your unselfishness significant, or does it look from a different aspect? I was thinking about it. The other thing that word in essence means, it means in a concentrated form. And as soon as I saw that word concentrated, I used to think, growing up, I don't know even if they sell it anymore because I haven't looked for it, but they used to sell, you know, juices or lemonades in the grocery store in concentrated form. You'd get the little frozen tube, you'd pour it in, and then you'd add your water and stir it. And I'm telling you what, it's the best lemonade ever. It just tastes good when you follow the recipe, right? But that's what it's saying. It comes in concentrated form so that when other things are added to it, it's good. It brings increase. It brings delight. It brings refreshing. And when you walk in this ingredient of unselfishness, it produces that in other people's lives. It doesn't seek its own happiness at the expense of others. I want to make this clear. When we're talking about love, this does not mean you become a doormat to someone. It doesn't mean you let people slap you around. No, but it means that you're taking consideration, not just thinking. And that key that we just said is not at the expense of others. Have you ever had that moment where you're like, I'm doing this no matter what. Who cares if it's good for anybody? I just want it. You know, but maybe there's expense to it that's greater than you really want to pay, but sometimes we get moved in the moment. We're like, we don't care. It doesn't matter the cost. It doesn't matter. We'll just push in. But that's what it's talking about when we're being unselfish, is loving people not at the expense of others. You know, not making it about yourself, I should say, at the expense of others. And so that's where we see unselfishness come in, and you know, you can practice this. Sometimes, my dad used to use this example all the time at home, but he's like, all right, you can see how selfish what your selfish meter's at is when the pizza comes out. Do you go for the biggest piece or leave that one for someone else? You know, and it's not that there's any shortage of pizza. It's just that we want to make sure we're taken care of, right? Or maybe it's your favorite dessert. I was always the one, I guess I caused a little bit of drama in the family as a result, because I wanted my portion, but I would like save it. And then someone who really enjoyed it was always over tempted, because when I say save it, I didn't always finish it at that meal. So they're like, well, it's been sitting here. She must not want it, right? And then I come back for it and it's gone. But, you know, are you even gauging that? Do you look at, has selfishness crept into your life and you didn't even realize it? Sometimes we get in that selfish moment or that selfish place and don't even realize that we're now doing things at the expense of someone else. Make sure that's not happening. The next aspect we see of love in our lives is a good temperament. Woohoo! What is a good temperament? That is having love in disposition. What is your disposition? Is it positive? Is it uplifting? Does it carry love with it? Or is your disposition kind of, I call it, the Eeyore, if you've ever watched that Winnie the Pooh. It didn't matter. Man, if the sun was out, he's like, yeah, it is. But it could be brighter. Is that your disposition? There's some people I know, and I've watched them go through some of the most intense circumstances, and they're still like upbeat and cheery, and you're like, is there something wrong with you? You kind of have people on both extremes, but are you the Eeyore? And of course, we know the antithesis of that with Eeyore is Tigger. You're like, Tigger, are you in reality at all? Because he's just bouncing through life, right? And having everything's great, everything's awesome. And, there's that balance of what is your disposition? Do you have a positive disposition or do you have a negative disposition? Are you bringing love with the increase of saying, hey, things are good. Maybe there's some negative things going on, but I'm telling you, I believe that we're making some progress forward. Why is that important? Because if you don't have hope, it's hopeless. And when things are hopeless, you don't feel like moving forward. You don't think there's something on the other side. And we've all faced situations, circumstances where we felt hopeless. And in that moment, you don't have a lot of strength. You don't have a lot of joy. You don't have endurance to run your race. But when you have this component of love, of being of good temperament, of having it in your disposition, then what? You bring it wherever you go. And sometimes just that small infusion of hope makes such a difference.
1 Corinthians 13:13 says, "The three most important things to have are faith, hope, and love. But the greatest of them is love." For your gift of $30 or more, we'll send you the CD or MP3 teaching series titled Love Above All Else. Is love the most important thing in your life? Do you know what the image of love looks like and how to walk in it? In this series, you'll see the power love has and what it can produce in your life when it's in full operation. Knowing what the image of love looks like enables us to produce it in a greater way. Activate the power of God in your life by seeing the impact, image, and action of love to produce something that is a delight to God and those around us. Order right away. Simply go to our website and click on the TV offer button. It'll be sent to you right away. Because of you, lives are being impacted daily for the kingdom of God. You are making a difference.
That's the question this morning. Are you allowing your circumstance to put such a burden on you that you can't even think about tomorrow's? Or how about someone else's tomorrow's? We used to say growing up, my dad was a pastor. And sometimes, let's be honest, doesn't matter if you're a preacher or not, you still have moments. Right? We kind of look at people and whatever they do and we're like, oh, everything's good for them. If you really had a conversation, you're like, you think this is good? But when we look across the aisle, we're like, oh, everything's perfect for them. But sometimes, Dad would have one of those moments and Mom would say, hey, God, send him somebody to minister to. Why? Because when he had to think of someone else rather than what he was facing, who he really was, what he really believed, rose up in him to pour it into someone else. When we're walking in this place, and again, when things begin to feel like they're crawling over the top of you and you don't see hope for your tomorrow, that's when you need to look out and say, God, who's somebody else that I can pour into? And I'll tell you, your circumstance can seem pretty bad, and then you hear someone else's story and you go, wow. I guess life is not that bad. Because again, we get so seeing right what's in front of us that we can miss the positive that's there. Why? Because it's the thing that's screaming the loudest. And so I want to encourage you as you focus on that, and maybe that's how you feel. And again, we've all felt that way, and it's not even wrong to feel that way, but you don't want to stay in that place. Because if you stay in that place, you lose the hope that's there. You lose the hope that God's intended for you, that there are brighter days ahead. And with this good temperament ingredient, it also means you're never irritated. Goodness, I haven't got there yet. Never irritated? Wow. So when that irritation comes, I sometimes, after you hear this message today, you might have an irritating moment, maybe on the way out the door. And as you go through that, the Holy Spirit might say, the thought might come, you're not supposed to be irritated if you're in love. I guarantee you're going to have some irritating moments. But the question is, are you going to stay with the irritation or choose to walk away from it? Unfortunately, I learned a long time ago I can't change anyone. I've tried. But in that, the only person I can change is Marie. The only attitude I can change is mine. The only outlook I can change is mine. And if I keep that as a focus, it produces a different result in me. And you can say, well, Marie, what about them? I don't know, but I know that if I'm happy, then it makes a difference for me, which also makes a difference for everybody I'm with. If I'm crabby at home, it affects the whole family. If I'm happy at home, it affects the whole family. And so I just have to make that choice to not be irritated. And just a few weeks ago, I was pretty irritated about something. And it was simple, but in that moment, it didn't feel simple. And the more I thought about it, the more irritated I got. And I remember standing in one place thinking about my irritation. And the Lord saying to me, is it really that big of a deal? I'm like, yeah, it is. I mean, this is wrong, and it shouldn't have happened, and I should have this when I want it. And I thought it was there, and it's not there. And, you go through all these things, and I began to think, and I love, God, again, God. He'll just say little things to you that cause you to put things in perspective. And he said, if this is the worst thing that happens to you today, what do you think about that? I thought, wow. If that's the worst thing that happens to me today, it's really not that big of a deal. But it took him saying that to me to not keep nursing my irritation. Like my irritation and I were having a party. We were having a cheer session on why I should be irritated and the reasons I should be irritated and why it made sense, and I kind of had all those documenting points, right? And I'm sure I could have found some people. Thankfully, I didn't spread it to anyone else. But have you ever done that? You find someone else who will agree with you? Not the one who says, hey, it's not that big of a deal, but you find that one that says, yeah, they shouldn't have done that. Yeah, it shouldn't be that way. And you're like, see, I know I'm right. And you feed your irritation. Are you feeding it or are you diminishing it? And I say that, why? Because what result do you really want? The truth is, the person that I was, or thing that I was irritated with, I didn't really want to have a fight with. But yet my irritation, if I didn't fix it, was going to produce a stress and a strife. And even if I didn't say anything, man, you can just walk in the room and feel it. Like, she woke up on the wrong side of the bed today. You can just sense that. Or maybe you've even said that to someone. Hello. Maybe I've said that to someone. You need to go back to bed and get out on the other side. Because I think you might be happier if you do. Because that's sometimes the spot we get in. So are you going to nurse it, or are you going to nurse and say, no, wait a minute, I'm going to be positive. This is not that big of a deal. It could be a lot worse. Good things are happening, and I'm having an awesome day. But that's good temperament. It's an ingredient of love. The next one we see is righteousness is an ingredient of love. What does that mean? Love in your conduct. Again, the way you conduct yourselves. That word righteousness actually means truthfulness, faithfulness, and rightness. I thought about that, truthfulness. I remember years ago we had a preacher here, and he came through, and before he knew Jesus in his life, he was like a liar. Now, I don't just mean a liar, but like everything that he said was a lie. And I remember that when he met Christ, he shared his story, and he said, I was so much a liar. It was so much a part of my life. Nothing I said was the truth, ever. He goes, so in order to correct that, I literally had to, every time I told a lie to someone, he goes, which was all the time, he said, I would have to say, excuse me, that was a lie. Let me tell you the truth. Now that sounds extreme, but he goes, that was the only way, because I had so created a habit of not being truthful that if I didn't stop myself and say, wait a minute, this is the truth. And I can tell you, I know that man today and what he does. And he is one who's known for his integrity, but that wasn't who he was before he knew Christ. And so once he knew Christ, even though he became righteous through the blood of Jesus, there was still some conduct that had to change. And he had to take some steps to keep that conduct, because you know what your conduct is? It's a habit you've developed. And I share that story because when I heard him say that, I was like, you know what? I mean, I don't consider myself a liar, but there's times that I've caught myself where you kind of, have you ever said it? Well, there was, it was this big, or there was hundreds there, and you're like, wait a minute, there really wasn't hundreds. It really wasn't this big. It was that big. I mean, but you're talking and you do those things, but I took away from him, wait a second, how can I correct myself? You know what? I just told you there was 5. There was really 3. And it wasn't that I meant to lie, but we end up embellishing things, speaking grandiose, and it becomes a deviation from the truth. And it's gradual, but then you'll find it starts in one area, and again, you just make statements, but you don't put the same value on the integrity of your conduct, of your words, of what you say. And then we also see faithfulness. What is faithfulness? It's being consistent in your conduct. It's being consistent in what you do. Do people know that when you say you'll do something, it'll actually happen? I have people in my life, and I know if they say they're going to do it, it will happen no matter what. I have other people in my life, and I know if they say they're going to do it, I don't hold my breath because I'm not really sure. I love them, and I hope and pray it's true, but I'm just not really sure. We had some friends when our children were little, and they were adult friends, but the kids really liked hanging out with them. They enjoyed being with them. And so we would sometimes meet them for dinner or have them over. And they didn't have any children, like I said, but it was not uncommon that we'd book something and they would not show up, or they would not come. And so I remember one time my youngest, he came to me and he was kind of a little upset. And he wasn't crying. He goes, I don't understand. Why aren't we doing this with them? And I was like, well, they couldn't make it. He goes, yeah, but you said, And I learned that with that one group in particular, we may have the statement, but I knew that it might not happen. So I kind of decided to not tell the kids about it anymore. Why? So that there wasn't this disappointment when it didn't show up. I just chose to say, oh, surprise, we're here, and they walked in, yay, look, we're going to have a fun moment, right? Not making them a bad person, but not creating that thing. But how many times, again, what is your faithfulness level? Does what you produce, what you say actually get produced? Or is it just a statement, and does somebody say in the back of their mind, well, we'll see if it happens or not? Right? That's never our intention, but sometimes we can fall into that. And then that last one is rightness, just being right. I don't mean like I'm right, but doing things right. Is that a trademark? Is that an ingredient of who you are? And then it also, when we talk about the last one here, it's sincerity. Sincerity is an ingredient of love. It actually means love and profession. And there's 2 things when I think of profession. I think of that being our job. Some of us have a profession. But then you also have profession in what comes out of you, the profession of your mouth. And so when we see sincerity, we're going to talk about a little bit what that word means, but it's love and profession. It's the quality of being free from pretense. Have you ever had pretense, where the next word is deceit? From being free from pretense, deceit, or hypocrisy. This means your love is consistent. It doesn't change. It doesn't waffle back and forth. It's who you are. It's part of your character. And this other thing that we see in love and sincerity, it rejoices when somebody does well. I was thinking about this the other day because sometimes you hear about people's successes and you're kind of happy for them, but maybe your thought is, well, what about me? I wanted my success in this area. If love is in sincerity, it rejoices when somebody else has something good happen to them. It doesn't immediately think, well, what about me? Right? And in that, rejoicing with those who rejoice. And I've had to learn this because sometimes things that people rejoice over don't really mean anything to me. But if I love them, that means I get excited about what they get excited about. I can tell you there's things that I have grown and can carry on great conversations with people, not because I knew anything about it or had any interest in it, but I took interest in it because the people closest to me were interested in it. And I say that because it's amazing to me how, because I took an interest in it because they did, it has now put me in places. I've been in business meetings, I've been at activities, I've been at social events where I never met a person but found out they were interested in the other person, what the other person I know is interested in. And I could carry on a conversation with them, have a thing. a whole dialogue, and some of my greatest recently have been on airplanes, and I feel like the people are chasing me out of the plane. Thank you for talking with me. And I'm thinking, hallelujah, because it wouldn't even have been a subject I could converse about, but it's because I took an interest in someone else a long time ago that I had the information to even carry on a conversation. And when you find ways to connect with people, guess what? You can share other things with them. But it's really hard to share something with someone when you have no connection point. And again, you don't have to be friends for life, but my goal and desire is that, I leave a residue, I leave a crease in someone's life if I meet them once or if I see them every week. Why? Because there's love taking place that leaves a remnant that kept them thinking.
1 Corinthians 13:13 says, "The three most important things to have are faith, hope, and love. But the greatest of them is love." For your gift of $30 or more, we'll send you the CD or MP3 teaching series titled Love Above All Else. Is love the most important thing in your life? Do you know what the image of love looks like and how to walk in it? In this series, you'll see the power love has and what it can produce in your life when it's in full operation. Knowing what the image of love looks like enables us to produce it in a greater way. Activate the power of God in your life by seeing the impact, image, and action of love to produce something that is a delight to God and those around us. Order right away. Simply go to our website and click on the TV offer button. It'll be sent to you right away. Because of you, lives are being impacted daily for the kingdom of God. You are making a difference.
Welcome back. All right, how's your recipe doing? Is it your version or is it God's version? That's the question today. There's several things that we talked about in there: humility, courtesy, some of those others. But one of them that I saw in particular that kind of stuck to me is the one that talked about never being irritated. Ooh, I had to see that I had to adjust my recipe a little bit on that one. I had some moments this week where maybe I got a little irritated, but that's not His perfect love being in me. Now, what are you saying, Marie? Are we never going to have an irritating moment? No, that's not the case, but it's what we do with those moments of irritation when they come. Do we act out of who we want to be and what we're feeling in the moment? Or do we go back to that anchor of what God's love is in our life and take that moment, even though the irritation's there, but let's be like that same environment that the pearl is put in? Do you know that a pearl, when it's created, which ends up very valuable, is all because an irritant was inserted, and it actually makes the perfect pearl? Because as it blocks out that irritant, it turns into that high-valued pearl that people want. So we can allow irritants in our life to be the same way. Allow them to become the pearls of your life that make you more like Christ, that make you a better reflection of who He is, and allow that to be true in you. I want to encourage you, if you'd like more information on this series or have love impacting in your life in a greater way, we have a series called Love Above All Else. It is several weeks of teaching on love, what it looks like, what it says in the scriptures, and how to make it a part of who we are. We just want you to know that we're praying for you. We thank God for you, and we're believing every day. I can tell you as a staff and in the different prayer meetings that we have throughout the day and the week, you are on our minds. Why? Because you're on God's mind. And because you're on God's mind, we bring you before the throne room of heaven. And in that place, we say, God, I want you to bless them. I want breakthrough in their lives. So allow us to partner with you in that. Let us know what you're believing for so that we can stand with you and see God move in a mighty way. We look forward to seeing you next week on Breakthrough.